2.
Oh, did that play? Wait, JP, did I miss that?
Wait a minute.
Absolute game off.
Nerd!
There we go. We only do
There
one
we go.
take.
There we go. It's official now. Now we
Yeah.
can start. No, that's JP's
start
baby.
over again?
It's no, we don't need to start over. Let's just keep it rolling here. JP made it, and it makes both of us smile every time, though. But yes, it is his baby. He definitely made it.
My son made that for me. I did the
did he?
intro, the sound, which I'm quite proud of that. It really, if you listen to it on YouTube, it really bangs where you have to like turn down the volume, and then we come on, and then it's like a little softer. So anyone who's playing it at home, like, oh my God, these guys are killing my ears, and then it goes normal after that. So I don't wake some people up, but yeah, we screwed up our first live event. We did our first recording. We weren't perfect, but that's Rohan's fault. So, but welcome everybody to the absolute game of nerds. We have Mr. Akins here from What's on the Comic Rack. Akins. That's what I said.
Okay.
Akins.
Nobody gets my name right. So that's
Akins,
usually
right?
I just let people go. It's Akins. But what's on the Comic
Rohan?
Rack?
Rohan for a long time.
Rohan.
Yeah, a lot of people mess up my name. But anyways, yes, we have another great guest. We have Mr. Akins from What's on the Comic Rack. Mr. Akins, what's going on?
Did I say that?
You said Akins, like the Akins diet.
I said Akins. Akins.
Yeah. You'll have to
tomato.
go back. Everybody at this point watching on YouTube is going back and seeing exactly what he said. What did he say?
Go back. I might say Akins, but there was no T in that. So
okay.
Well, yeah, we couldn't afford the T or the D.
Anyways, how you doing, Mr. Akins?
I'm doing great. How about y'all?
Oh, doing fantastic.
Better if I got on the live thing here.
Yeah, we're not live, JP. We're recorded still.
Whatever, recording. We're lively recording, right?
Yes, live record. I like that. Yeah. But yes, all right. Let's get into it though, instead of messing around here. So, Mr. Akins, we always start with the same first question. It is, what is your origin story? Take us back, way back whenever it all started, how it started. Take us through it.
Well, it's going to go way back.
Well, let's go.
All the way back to April of 1976. Were you even born, Rohan?
I was not. I was born in 83. JP wasn't even born either.
So
must look much older than you.
I was 7 years old. I remember going someplace I was not supposed to go, and that was my brother's room. And inside, right on the dresser, right inside the door, was a stack of comics, and most of them were Fantastic Four comics.
Wait, real quick, this is literally how Home Alone starts. He's not supposed to go into Buzz's room. There's a stack of magazines.
So exactly, I got in there, and you always have those. How did you get comics? Well, we traded comics. Oh, how did you get comics? Well, I bought those off the rack. Nobody ever says I stole these comics, and that's basically what I did. I stole those comics from my brother.
What comics did you steal?
Well, it was at the time in April 1976, there were two Fantastic Four titles being put out. There was the regular title, and then there was a reprint called Marvel's Greatest Comics, or Marvel's Greatest Comics. And that was reprinting Jack Kirby and Stan Lee issues. So those are the first things I ever saw were Jack Kirby comics. He also had a
surprised you kept collecting after you saw those.
Maybe he's a Kirby hater.
He's a Kirby hater. I love Kirby. Kirby's like my second favorite.
Oh, he's my number one.
And I remember having those. I remember a Fantastic Four. I think it's 91. It's got the Thing on the cover. What the story is there was a scroll that came to Earth looking for combatants in gladiatorial games, and he captures the Thing and takes him back. And the scrolls are all, they've kind of adopted pre-prohibition style world where they've got biplanes and, it looks like pre-prohibition. They've got, bowler hats and, Tommy guns and stuff. But they've got a gladiatorial combat. And so they go around and they capture these people, and it's basically they're fighting these guys for betting purposes and stuff. And that's got the Thing. He's got this collar around him. There's like a blimp in the background. The guy's got Tommy guns and stuff. But those guys are actually scrolls that are shape changed to look like humans. And he had that issue. I know he's got that issue because I just got through making a video about that issue. And I had a tendency also of cutting out the corner boxes or cutting out pictures inside the comic. So not only did I steal his comics, I basically destroyed them. That's the reason my wife says, no wonder he never talks to you anymore, because, you know, all that stuff. I used to love those corner boxes. What made those corner boxes so cool was it gave the character a whole pose. It's a full pose of the character.
No, not all of them. A lot of the Fantastic Four ones had the 4 heads.
Right. But the one that, like JP was saying, the world's greatest comics that were coming out at that time, they had 2. They had the Thing in one corner and the Human Torch in the other corner. And for most of them, you're right, there were some that didn't have, just some of them had headshots and those kind of things. But the one that had the full pose of a character, boy, those suckers were cut out and they were put on stands. And I had my own little adventures with those guys until those things got destroyed. And then I got to find another comic and I'd cut pictures out of that one and create my own little adventures with the comics and stuff.
Wait, were there any repercussions from your brother from cutting up his comics?
There are always repercussions. Let me put it this way. I never played baseball. And the whole reason I never played baseball is somebody throws a baseball at me, I'm ducking, because he used to hit me with baseballs, and getting hit with a baseball hurts. Really bad. So he would whiz me with baseball. So yes, there were repercussions for doing all that stuff.
But you don't cut out the corner boxes anymore of your comics.
I don't cut out the corner boxes.
Not of his own, but of anybody else's, he'll do it, right?
Most of them, you know, I still, like I said, I'm actually going through my collection and seeing what I can find that I actually cut up. I still got that Fantastic Four 91. I got it, but I've got a replacement for it. There was a Marvel supervillain team up. I was like, oh, I haven't seen this in a long time. It's got a picture of the Submariner fighting the Circus of Crime on the front of it. It's actually taking place in Latveria. It's got the Shroud. It's got Dr. Doom in it. It's like, oh, this is going to be pretty cool. Open that sucker up, and there's page after page cut up. I was like, okay. Can't read.
How did you have to put like cardboard behind them to have it stand up?
Yes.
Okay, so
I would take
that glue and that glue stick and tape. Okay.
Yeah, I usually take tape because my dad had an auto parts store, and so there's a lot of cardboard in the back of the store, and there was tape available. And so I would tape it to a piece of cardboard and then tape it to a stand, and so you'd have it on a stand and that kind of thing. And so instead of action figures, that's what I would use, because as soon as I would get action figures, I would tear those up. Back then, it was the Mego action figures.
Yep.
And so I knew I had Iron Man Mego action figure. I knew I had the Hulk. But, you know, I even had an issue with those Migos because the Iron Man was like this big and the Hulk was smaller than Iron Man. I'm like, even as a kid, I'm like, this is not right. The Hulk's supposed to be big and massive, and it was tinier. It was like a full, almost half of an inch shorter than Iron Man. So, But yeah, instead of, once I tore up my action figures, that's what I would go to. I would cut out comics and make action figures.
With the Fantastic Four issues, like what else did you like though growing up? Like what other comics?
Well, and that's the thing. Now that I'm going back and looking at it, I can see why I like the Fantastic Four, because that's what I was kind of introduced to. I was introduced to the Fantastic Four. At some point in time, I got really into Iron Man. And really at that time, once I started, another place that we could get comics, we lived pretty close to the beach, and my dad had more than one auto parts store, and he would run the one that was 40 miles away from where we lived. He would have to drive every day, open that store up. But once school was out, for a certain amount of the time over the summer, we would drive down to the beach. And it was still a 40-mile drive for him, but we had a trailer in the trailer park. And I can remember on the way down there was this bookstore, and my mom would get books. It was a used bookstore, and she would get books that she was going to read over the summer. Well, they had stacks of comics, and I remember buying comics from there. Say, "Oh, Mom, can I get some comics?" She's like, "Sure." But what the guy would do, and I still got some of those, he would take a stapler and he would staple them shut so you couldn't sit there and just read the comic and then go, "Okay, I don't want that one." So I've got all these comics with these with holes right here where I had to pull the staple out to get those. So it was kind of what was available there, and what was available there. It seemed like it was always Marvel. It was very few DC comics in those piles. And you can remember always picking up Iron Man, always pick up the Hulk, always pick up the Avengers. Fantastic Four was in there. And then some weird stuff. There was always also horror anthologies in there, like House of Mystery, those kind of things. I just saw one yesterday that I know I got from there. And that's how I know I got it, because I'll look at it and go, oh, there's 2 staple holes right here. Then I know where I got that comic book from. A strange UFO stories, just weird stuff. And so I started getting into the Avengers, and it was primarily Marvel stuff. And now I can look back at my collection and also go, oh, I've got these issues, and they're all kind of came out around the summer. And I could tell that's when I was reading comics. It was over the summer. We were going down there. We were going by that bookstore, and I was picking up comics from there. My brother, like I said, had some comics. I'm not sure where he got them from, but at some point in time, I started noticing them at gas stations and grocery stores. And then I started saying, hey, Mom, can I have some, can I get some comics? And so she started buying me comics from the gas stations. And I don't know, I was drawn more to Marvel. They seemed to be, I guess they did a better marketing plan at that point, where there was a lot.
I mean, at that era for sure.
70s though?
It's still the 70s. It wasn't until the 80s, about 80, 81 is when I got my first bicycle. So then you got freedom, and then I could do chores around the house. I could mow the grass. I could do other chores, earn a little bit of money. And then I could ride about 5 miles to the gas station on my bike. And then I could start buying what I wanted. And then what was I looking for? I was looking for stuff where people were fighting. If there was a lot of exposition in the comic, I'm like, this is boring. I don't like, if there's fighting in it, I'm like, ooh, this one's cool. This one's cool. And I think I've said this over and over in a lot of my videos. The first comic I remember buying with my own money is Avengers Annual 10. Oh. Yes, it's the first appearance of Rogue, but there's a lot of fighting in that with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants against the Avengers.
I mean, there's a lot of fighting on just the cover with like the different panels.
And that's what drew me. Everybody hates that cover.
I love that cover. I love it.
There's a lot of people that rate that as like, ooh, it's not a good first appearance cover because Rogue's not, primarily on the cover, primary featured. But for me, like you said, those little boxes saying, ooh, watch Captain America get totally defeated. Iron Man knocked out of action. The new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and then it's got an X-Men
appearance by the X-Men, yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is great. And plus, that artwork by Michael Golden in that comic, I think is absolutely phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was looking for about that age. In the 80s, I'm starting to look for, ooh, who's fighting who. I'm still picking up primarily Avengers, Iron Man, the Hulk. There's still a lot of Marvel that I'm picking up because then I'm familiar with them.
Yeah.
I started picking up and John Byrne. Of course, once John Byrne got on Fantastic Four, that was my favorite title.
So you didn't like him when he was on X-Men first?
See, I didn't get any of those. I never saw any of those. And I think people liked those so much that they weren't dumping those off at the used bookstore because that was good stuff. They're not, I don't remember the first X-Men comic I remember picking up is X-Men 175. Mm-hmm. It's got a picture of it's Mastermind making the X-Men. It's really Cyclops versus the X-Men, but they think they're fighting Phoenix. It's got a picture of the Phoenix, and she's got this hand that's going. It's got Colossus like pushing back his hand. And I think it's done by Paul Denny. I think does the cover of X-Men 175. That's the first X-Men comic. Once I started picking up X-Men, then I would try to pick up everything Marvel did. If Marvel put out something and I could afford it, I was picking it up. So about 1980 till 1998, I was picking up as much Marvel stuff as I could possibly read. I wanted to read everything. I wanted to be, knowledgeable on they would reference something. I go, okay, I need to pick that one up. Something I don't think comics do as much today is saying, hey, this took place or reference another comic, and then make you want to go and make you want to go and read those other comics. And then I also got into DC. One of my friends about 1984, he was into DC. He was really big into the Teen Titans, Marv Wolfman and George Perez. And so what we would do is we would just trade stuff off. Hey, I'll let you read mine. You can read yours, because he was primarily DC and I was primarily Marvel. So that I know a lot in that era of DC, but I don't own a lot of it because he owns it. I don't. So,
well, that's what I was about to say, because by the 80s, that's when Superman, the movie, came out. Was what, 79, I think, or
78, 79. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that was huge. That was a huge movie, so that's the first movie I saw, superhero movie I saw. And it wasn't until HBO years later when I was old enough to watch it, I guess, because I was just only a year or two old when it came out. But that put me on to knowing Superman and Batman, right? Because they had DC, the superpower cartoon, and Spider-Man had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and that, I knew both of them that way. But I guess I didn't see as many at the 7-Eleven in regard to DC as like you're saying, the Marvel. Maybe Marvel put out more at those places.
And then you still have every comic you've bought, correct?
I still have every comic I ever bought. Yeah.
So now, what's that number?
I think I sold some here recently, but that wasn't from comics that I bought. I bought a collection. I haven't processed that entire collection because that collection was 17 long boxes of 90s junk. It wasn't stuff that wasn't worth anything, but I got them for 17 cents a piece. And I'm like, that's a really good deal. He just wanted to move it. And I'm like, I'll take it and I'll try to put it on eBay. I haven't processed that stuff. What I bought since I was a kid, that's around 12,000 comics that I've got. Then I've got those other comics that I haven't completely processed yet of 17 long boxes. So I got a bunch of comics back there. I basically got to the point that I can't handle anymore as far as room wise. And that's the reason that 17 long box collection, first off, I want to try to make my money back off of it. And I did, just selling it on eBay. And I was selling stuff for $1. I was like, oh, you want this for $1? Where I was really pricing it for like $1.25 or $1.40, just because the fees. And so it ended up being, I'd sit there and mathematically figure out, okay, I got to sell this to make $1. I got to sell it for this. And just probably in the past 4 months, I made my money back. And as soon as I made my money back, I stopped listing stuff on eBay. I'm like, well, I made my money back. All this now is, just gravy. Let me go through and actually process this stuff and see what I've got. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of 90s independent,
lots of foil.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of Wildcats. It was a lot of, what did I sell yesterday? I sold something yesterday and I'm like, okay, it was WildStar number 1 through 4. I think I sold those for, next to nothing. I also sold a Rune, the Curse of Rune, 1 through 4. It's got Barry Windsor Smith artwork on the front. I don't know if they had anything in the back. And this is how cheap those things were. I know I sold 1 through 4, but I was looking at it because I already got them processed and in boxes and ready to go, so that when it goes off on eBay, I just pull it out and stick it in a mailer or something and send it off. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh, there's only supposed to be 4 comic books in this, but there's 6. Well, the reason why there's 6 is because there's probably 2 other things that have to do with Rune that I knew there was no way I could move them. So I'm just sticking them in there and just letting them, hey, here you go. Here's 2 extra, make them look because I always like that when I get stuff off eBay and I'm like, ooh, I got a little extra, got an extra comic book in here. What is this?
It's a little customer service there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What is, so 12 that is a lot. That's quite a bit of room. I imagine
200 comics.
Yeah.
Right. 250 times 17 long boxes. So
that's in the other. Jeez, man.
Yeah,
that's your wife is okay with all that process, all that storage.
Well, it's funny. We remodeled this house And there's a room down there that somebody obviously was using for an office. It's not in the main part of the house. It's got a pocket door. You don't even know that room's down there. And and she's like, you've got a room to put all your stuff. I'm like, I do. And it's got little cubbies and at first I was thinking about, I'm going to tear out all this built-in shelving.
Is that the room that you film in with the comics behind you?
That's the room I film in, but it's so far away, the router can't send the signal down there. And that's the reason I don't ever do any of my lives. If you see my lives, it's just this blue background. It's because I can't get a signal. I think I did a live with Colossus Collector, and I was like, burp, burp, beep, burp. And I said,
well, that's why you gotta get those extenders. That way you can get down there and film in there.
And I do have an extender. I just haven't hooked it up. I hadn't gone through the process of doing that. I said, I can just sit here and do it here. But yeah, they're all down there. So there's like a little area before you get to the actual room. And in the middle of the room, I've got a table. Well, up under that table, there's long boxes stacked up under the table. So it's not really obtrusive. And then behind me, I've got those plastic short boxes. Those things stack really nice. And on the outside of it, I've got the comic of what's inside of it. And then I've got long boxes stacked down there. And then there's a closet down there as well. It's a large closet. And I've got long boxes stacked all the way to the top in that closet. And then there's another storage unit above that. And I've got long boxes stuffed in there. So I've got long boxes stuffed all over the place down there, but it's pretty well organized. I don't really collect anything else except comics and the little mini bus. That's the only thing I collect anymore.
What are you still buying comics off the rack, we'll say then today, or are you just buying stuff on eBay now?
Yes, I'm still buying a few things off the rack. I quit my pull box. I had a lot of things that were being pulled at the LCS. Still was getting the Avengers, Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America. I was still getting all those, but those things can be $5 a pop. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? I really want an Iron Man #1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut everything out except Iron Man. And the way I determined Iron Man was my favorite character, I used this app. And as I was going through my collection, that's the reason I know I got 12,000, because that's what the app tells me. And then the app also tells you, oh, here's your top 10 characters based on the comic books you own, that Iron Man has appeared in this one. And Iron Man was #1, Captain America was #2, down the list. And that's how I determined, oh, well, I guess Iron Man is my favorite character because I own more Iron Man than anything else. I liked Iron Man. I said, I really want an Iron Man #1, and I want to own his entire run from 1 to 332, which really the only thing I didn't have was stuff below 100. Mm-hmm. And so it's, I wanted at first to, maybe I can find it in the wild, and I would go to my LCS, and instead of buying stuff off the rack, I would go to the back issues and start pulling out. So I've got everything he has. Only thing he didn't have was stuff below 80. And I'm like, I guess I could go to, there's no other comic shop around. And I'm like, I don't know how I don't really want to buy these things off of eBay individually. Yeah. And I was watching Aussie Comic Book Collector, and he gets a lot of his stuff from my comic shop. Mm-hmm. I'm like, usually I buy stuff off of eBay, but getting individual comics like that, it's going to be really hard. And, my comic shop allows you to go, hey, I want 77, and you can pick the grade. And in December, my Christmas present for me was I bought about 25 issues of Iron Man below 70. Ended up being like around $100, $90 or something like that. And the only big issue I don't have of that Iron Man run is 55.
But you have one. You have one now, though.
I've got one. 55 will be the next big one. Once I finish that run, that's one of my goals this year, is to finish that run. Now that I'm using my comic shop, I can probably finish that run pretty easily. And the other thing I'm doing is I would really like to collect everything John Byrne has ever done. And so I've gone to his early work in Charlton. He did a title called Doomsday +1. I got that for Christmas. My sister-in-law got that. I really ordered it off of eBay, but one of those Christmas gifts like that, like, hey, what do you want? Hey, I want this. She ordered it off of eBay. It's the first 6 issues.
Nice.
he did the art, but he didn't do the story. It's a really weird story. It's from 1975. But what it reminds me of, you know, that new movie coming out, ISS, about the International Space Station and World War III is taking place.
I have not seen the trailer for
I haven't
this.
seen that one yet.
I've seen trailers for it. And so there's Russians and Americans on the International Space Station, and war takes, you know, starts on Earth. And they're asked to, you know, well, you need to take over the space station, you know, so it's like the Russians and the Americans fighting over the space station. This comic Doomsday Plus One has a team of scientists doing the space mission. And while they're off in space, they come back and war has taken place. And so all kinds of weirdness ensues after that. So it's kind of weird that that movie's coming out and that comic book is what I'm reading right now.
Okay, so real quick, I do want to talk about John Byrne, but before I just want to follow up with the new comics you are getting. Are you still avidly reading them?
Not as much. Here's what happens. Like a good example is I bought a cover buy of Sensational She-Hulk, Adam Hughes, where she's in a bikini and she's in the pool. She's got multiple floats to help hold her up. It's like, man, that is a beautiful cover. I got to own that cover, but you know, I'll probably read it. So I've got a stack of books back there that I'm going to read. Well, what ends up happening is that one keeps getting put down to the bottom. I'll get these John Byrne comics. I'm like, oh, I'm going to read these, or I'm actually going back and reading some of my older comics that I may not have read in 40 years. Like I said, from 1976, I'm like, I haven't read this stuff since 1976. Let's give it a reread. And so the newer stuff seems to be getting moved to the bottom. And as I'm reading stuff that's older stuff. So the only thing I still get pulled is Iron Man. I got that Sensational She-Hulk. I haven't read it. There's a new X-Men title with the original X-Men that just came out.
I did see that. Yeah.
I've got that. That's on the stack. I haven't read that yet. I saw Comics Limited talk about it. He kind of said some things about it. Said, oh, kind of gave me some idea of what was going on, but I still haven't read it yet. So no, I haven't been reading as much newer stuff as I do the older stuff. Part of it is I feel disconnected a little bit from the newer stuff. I don't know if the stories are as good, or I don't really know what's going on.
Well, I mean, we could.
Yep, that's it.
Fair. I would say we could, you know, you could say that you're not reading the new stuff, but you are still, it sounds like,
I'm going to buy this right now.
Reading. I was going to say, I'm surprised JP didn't have it yet, but I'm saying, but another reason I was buying it, I was like, I like participating in Alan's cover challenges, and he did a bikini cover challenge. And I'm like, I got to have that one for my bikini cover challenge. Yeah. I was going breezing through, eBay, and I'm like, ooh, I got to have that one. Yeah.
And,
but yeah, I would just say, but you are still an avid comic book reader, whether or not it be new, you may be rereading old stuff, but you are still actively, which JP and I are not doing, right? We are just solely collecting, but you are collecting and you are reading still.
Right. And so I would consider
we're not really reading anything.
Well, no, that's not correct, JP. I'm a reader. I read books. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I think you actually read books. You were talking about reading. What was it?
I read books, but they're not comic books.
I was talking about A Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones.
The Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire. See, I haven't read that. So I think most of my reading, and that was another one of my goals this year, was I wanted to read more. I'm like, I want to reread this stuff because I'm watching some people's videos. I mean, I think I'm a big consumer of comic book YouTube stuff. And I'm always amazed at the knowledge some people have about not only why is this a key issue, but the storylines within, and if you're talking about something from the 80s and 90s, I know it. I pretty much can, but once it gets past 1998, and the reason it was 1988 was that's when I started my teaching job, and I didn't realize how much time teaching would take once you go home and all the stuff you got to do. You do work there, and then you got to do work at home. that kind of stopped me from collecting and reading as much. I noticed I would get some and then they would be in a pile there and I wouldn't read it, as opposed to the 80s and 90s. As soon as I got a comic, it got home, I read that sucker. Where's the next one? I was just ravenously consuming that stuff.
And I want to say, JP, real quick. So right now I'm currently reading Wool, which is the first of the 3. So on Apple TV, there's a TV show called Silo that did its first season. That show is based on these books, and I'm about halfway through. It's like a 600-page book, though, so it's taking me some time. But I do read. So, yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I have the same 2 graphic novels next to my bed, and I have no time to do that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So one of these days I'll read something.
Talk to us. Anyway, so we've gotten to know you, obviously, as a part of the Illuminati chat. That's kind of where we met.
Right. That which cannot be named.
Yes, exactly. But you can't talk to you without knowing that you are, and as you've already alluded to here, a massive John Byrne fan. What is it that drew you to John Byrne? Why John Byrne? Talk to me about that.
I really, first off, I think
John Byrne.
That's John Byrne. Yes. One comic he hated doing. He's like, well, you're going to pay me to do this. I'll do it. I used 28 issues to finally get the characters, because the characters are created just to fight the X-Men. There was no depth to the characters. I think the first thing I'm drawn to in a comic is visual. If I like the visuals, if I like the art, I think I can stay with a comic longer if the art is better and the story is bad. If the art is bad and the story is good, sometimes it's got to be a really good story, because if the art's really bad and I don't like it, I don't like the style that they're doing, then I will drop it really quickly. So I really like his art style. And his art style changed dramatically over the years. When he first started, and that's one thing I like to look, going back and looking at his stuff and watching other people do YouTubes about John Byrne, I'm learning more and more about what he was doing. But that first issue of Fantastic Four that I picked up that he did, I was like, ooh, this is really cool. I love this style. It's like a pop art, cartoony style at that time. And I really loved his exposition, his positioning of characters, the way the characters looked. So that was the first thing that drew me in. The next thing was, I like his storytelling. I like the way he develops characters. One thing I can't stand about certain comics is if everybody talks the same. That if you took away the pictures and you just saw word bubbles, you may not be able to tell who is talking. In his comic books, his dialogue is, to me, very natural. It's not, it furthers the story. It's not a bunch of exposition as to, ooh, this, that, or the other. It kind of forwards the story. And you can tell who's talking by the word bubbles. And I think he did a really good job in the Fantastic Four of doing that. You could tell Reed Richards was smart by the way he was talking. You could tell the Thing he had his certain personality by the way he talked. Johnny was a hothead by the way he talked. Susan was the level-headed one, the glue of the team by the way she talked. She was the mother figure to the rest of them. And so I really love his dialogue. What else? His characters always seem to have flaws. And when they have flaws, when the villain comes in, they not only have to defeat their own flaws, it makes them more vulnerable to any villain that comes in. The Fantastic Four can fight Galactus, but at the same time, they may have trouble with Paste Pot Pete, at the same time. And so, this soap opera type storytelling, that there's all this interpersonal relationship and how this person relates to this other person. And yes, I used to tell people, if you like soap operas, you will love comics, because soap operas have a lot of the same thing. I'm watching, when I was a kid, All My Children, and this character would, so-and-so's dead, but now her twin sister that looks just like her is, and it was played by the same character, and I'm like, this is like comic books. I'm like, so-and-so comes back from the dead, and he's back, and what are we going to do? And his relationship to so-and-so. So I like that. I like subplots. He's a master of subplots, meaning you have to pay attention to his supporting cast. His supporting cast is going to be important later on, usually in the story. So I don't think John Byrne was good at creating new characters, but creating new supporting cast, I think he was a master at that. And you caring about these new supporting characters, so that I think he created those so that he could put those in more danger, or you knew that these characters could be offed, and this is a character you care about, and therefore create more danger and more suspense and more drama with the other characters, the main characters you knew wasn't going to die. They're not going to kill off, Johnny Storm. They're not going to kill off Reed Richards, but they may kill off Wyatt Wingfoot. They may kill off Bernie, who became Nova. You may kill off some of these other characters. So those are kind of things I really like about John Byrne's writing. So.
No, I love it. I think that's a great reasoning and explanation. That was awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, just to ask from the art perspective, is there a absolute favorite John Byrne cover?
I know. Well, see, when we started doing those challenges of, what's your favorite, your top five, I'm like, how can you choose what your favorite cover is? I think right now, my favorite cover is Fantastic Four 249. That's the one with Gladiator holding the thing over his head, and the rest of Fantastic Four are defeated. He homaged that in Superman, I think number 8. And when I was that age, I actually, you didn't have the computer technology you did now. I actually took what was called tracing paper.
Oh yeah, I remember tracing paper.
I traced the entire Fantastic Four cover, and then I traced Superman into
Gladiator.
where Gladiator was, because it fits perfectly in there.
Oh yeah, dude, this cover's great. I don't think I've ever seen this actually. Yeah, or at least don't remember it. But yeah, no, this is great.
And so that is probably my favorite piece of artwork. In fact, I loved it. I love it so much. I'm probably going to find one that's above a 9.0 and buy that slabbed, because I have the comic, but I love, if I get something slabbed, it's usually because if I get it slabbed,
yeah,
because I like the artwork. And now I'm just framing a piece of art. It's what I'm doing.
I pulled up Superman 8, and yeah, no, it's the exact cover.
And you can transpose those two characters, Superman and Gladiator, in there right over each other, and they fit perfectly, same proportion and everything. So
yeah, I mean, even the characters in the background are laid out the exact same way.
And they kind of have the same power set. Those Legion of Superhero characters have the same kind of power set in a sense.
Yeah. So did you then pick up Superman when John Byrne was on Superman?
Yeah, I was one of those back then. They used to call it the Byrne 50,000. He used to carry 50,000. If he went to another title, you were guaranteed to sell 50,000 more copies because he was at the height of his career at that point. So if John Byrne had a title, you knew you better print 50,000 more copies, because you're going to sell 50,000 more than what you normally sell. And so there was a group of people that would just follow John Byrne into whatever he did. And I was one of those. As soon as he went to DC, I was with him. When he went back to Marvel, I was with him. When he went and did his independent stuff with the Next Men, I've got all that stuff too. Like I said,
I was gonna say real quick, I just want to comment. The corner box on Fantastic Four 249 is really great. It's actually Sue in an action shot, and then the floating heads of the rest of the four.
Exactly. So yeah, I followed it all the way till 1998. I think is when I really wasn't vehemently picking up comics. And John Byrne's art style had changed because he was experimenting with different things. And so I was looking for nostalgia. I was looking for, I want Terry Austin to ink his stuff. It's not looking the same. I wasn't in a position to appreciate what he had changed his art style into.
Yeah, so, Terry Austin is like the only inker I feel like I know by name outside of like Joe Sinnott.
Yeah.
So,
and it's probably because of all the stuff he did.
Scott Williams did Jim Lee.
Well, yeah, so then now you would go with Scott Williams. Yeah, those are probably the 3 inkers I can ever name.
Dick Giordano, he does some inking.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Who else does a lot of inking?
Oh, I do know there's that Scott Hanna. I think he does a lot of Spider-Man with Romita Jr.
Yes.
But anyways, what I wanted to ask you though, as a Byrne expert, like I know of Byrne from X-Men, and then I know he went to Fantastic Four, and then I knew he did Superman. So what are some of the other big titles that Byrne has worked on?
That was, I mean, that would be his big, that's what everybody would say, that his zenith was X-Men and then Fantastic Four and then Superman. And then after Superman, that's when he started to go down. But he has done every title I can think of. He's done the Hulk. He's done Iron Man. He's done Spider-Man. He's done the Fantastic Four. He's done the X-Men. I'm trying to think of what other titles that he's.
Avengers.
He did the Avengers. Name a title, and then he did Superman. He did Batman. He did Wonder Woman. I liked his run
Superman
on Wonder Woman.
was the Man of Steel run.
Yeah, he did the Man of Steel.
Right, he did
and then
the Man of Steel run where he brought back the origin.
Right, when he rebooted after the Crisis
did a retake on his origin.
Mm-hmm. And so he did all the titles. He did Action Comics, which at that time was more of a team-up book, so that when you looked at those stories, he's always teamed up with somebody. He was teamed up with the Titans. He was teamed up with the Green Lantern. He's teamed up with Hawkman. So it was almost like here's Superman teamed up with somebody else from the DC universe, almost like a Spider-Man title, Marvel team up, where Spider-Man's teamed up with somebody else. Trying to think of what else he's done.
Well, let me ask you this: you said a goal of yours would be collect every book he has? Is that every cover? Is that anything he has anything to do with, or what?
Anything to do with art or writing. So really, I've got the bulk of it, except the expensive ones now are going to be, I don't have the X-Men stuff, the stuff he worked on. And those are going to be the ones that are going to be expensive.
What's the quantity? What's the quantity we're talking about here in terms of how many is that books?
Well, there's a website. It's called Byrne Robotics. You go to Byrne Robotics and they have a checklist. Here's the checklist of everything John Byrne has ever worked on. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, well, dang, I got most of this. Like you said, I've got all the stuff from the 80s, 90s, and most of the 2000 stuff.
And is that just because of the stuff you picked up off the rack as you were growing up?
And that's the stuff I picked up off the rack. What I have to do is I have to go backtrack, meaning I have to go back and try to collect the X-Men stuff and the stuff he did at Charlton, when he was first starting off. Mm-hmm. It's funny that we start making YouTube content. Go ahead. Were you about to say something, JP?
To say that on Key Collector, in Key Collector, it says that he has, as an artist, he has 1,700 books.
That's not bad. That's not much. That's
wild.
Easy.
That's ridiculous.
That's easy to put in my collection back there.
Yeah,
at 17 cents a book. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I don't know if I'm going to do this because some of his stuff is still relatively cheap. You can find stuff in the dollar bin. I don't know if I'm actually going to create a box or boxes. These are John Byrne boxes. You start, and here's his earliest work I've got, and it's just John Byrne stuff. They're separate long boxes with just Byrne things in it, not what I bought off the rack.
Would your holy grail be a John Byrne piece of original art?
I would love to have a John Byrne piece of original art, and you can get it. You just have to pay for it.
You gotta get it, definitely, yeah.
And that's how he makes his money nowadays.
Did he hold on to his pages?
No, he just does a bunch of original art. I've been doing a lot of shorts here lately. I think I did one for Absolute Game of Nerds, and it says Absolute Game of Nerds versus John Byrne. And then there's a picture of John Byrne where he drew himself talking on the phone. I try to make a funny caption right there. And then after that, I put commissioned pieces of art by John Byrne that people may not actually have seen before. You see all the stuff that you see in the comic books, but once people get this commissioned art, you can usually find it on the internet. And so I liked doing that over the break. I was spending all kinds of time just looking at John Byrne. I mean, there's just so much art to look at. And I'm like, well, what can I do with this art? Ooh, I can start dumping it into a folder, and let's make one for, Big McFly. Let's make one for a Colossus collector. And so it's got to be 16 seconds. So I put like 3 or 4 pieces of artwork. Like I did one for Lunch Money Comics. It's got all Nightcrawler. It's got a Nightcrawler commission that somebody did. It's got 2 Nightcrawler commissions and a Colossus Nightcrawler commission and a commission where it has Wendigo, Wolverine, and Nightcrawler in it. So that's more.
Do you know what he charges for a commission?
Oh, I don't know.
What do the pieces like on the internet go for roughly?
Some of those on eBay were thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So that's after somebody's bought it and then put it up on eBay. I know, let me put it this way, years ago, which I wish I'd probably done it years ago. We're talking, early 90s. I remember the internet, there was John Byrne art then, and I was looking to see how much it was. And I think at that time he was charging hardly anything, like $250 for a piece of work. But he's also known for being really quick with his stuff, because he can, that was one reason he got the job, was for the X-Men, because Dave Cockrum couldn't make the deadlines and John Byrne could make the deadlines. And he was able to just pump out. He could quickly pump out a lot of stuff.
I find this is one of the things that blows my mind when I think about back in the day with comics. Like when I think about Kirby, for example, like in the 60s, Kirby was doing X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four, multiple titles that are coming out on a monthly basis. And unlike today, so today there are very few artists that are like the big name artists that are doing sequential art, right? They're just doing covers and variant covers and bits here, bits there. But like these guys are cranking through whole books and multiple titles at a time onto like that is mind blowing to me.
It's mind blowing to me too, because when I went back, I said, ooh, I started collecting or reading comics in 1976. What came out in April of 1976? And what do I still have? I was making that video. And so I showed what I had and I said, well, ooh, what's my top 10 from just January of 1976 that I don't have in my collection? So I made a top 10. Out of that top 10, Sal Buscema had drawn 4 of those titles. I'm like, dude, the dude was working in 1976. He was just over that board and he's just going at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible to really think about. Let's transition a little bit though. Since you were talking about making shorts and things like that, I've watched your channel, but I don't know how far back. When did you start? What got you to start? And then kind of give people who may not know, what is the gist of your channel?
That is a very good question. What is the gist of my channel? I started in April of 2023. That's when I started. And it all started, and it's funny that we're doing this, and I just got through seeing a video by him, was Alex the Comic Hoarder. He put out a challenge saying, hey, I want you to show me your top comics in your collection. You
top
can make
5, right? We did that.
It was top 5.
That was actually the first live episode we ever did.
And so he said, the only thing you need is a phone. We just want to see it. And so that's how it started, was that. I said, you know what? I can go down there and I can show, my 5 comic most, I can do this. Well, the thing was, and I think like most people, well, not most people, other people I've talked to, like Obito Comics, the younger kid, he had a YouTube channel doing something completely different. I have another YouTube channel that has nothing to do with comics, but that's because I'm an online math teacher and I've got a channel where I'm doing math. Nobody's watching that one. I don't even want to watch it. And and so I was a little bit familiar with YouTube and how to at least upload a video and that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, well, I can make a whole nother channel. Let's make a whole nother channel. Well, then it started getting into, ooh, let's edit some stuff. Ooh, this is neat. And it was really because I'm into YouTube and I'm into comics. I think doing something on YouTube is just an extension now of the hobby. we got so many people that just get on there and you just, hey, look at this comic. Ooh, this one's cool. And now it's how many people can last, how many people can keep going. What's the gist of my channel? The whole thing at the top was, I think I said, my personal journey, my personal comic book journey, type situation was what it was. And so that was what started it all off, was my personal comic book journey. And I just wanted to, kind of show what I have in my collection.
Yeah. So you talk about you're into editing. You watch, it's funny, like on our group chat, you talk about like, oh, I'm so archaic in my editing skills and things like that. I love your editing in your videos. So what my question is, if you have a 10-minute video, let's just say, how long does it take you to edit that up?
It probably takes, like that Dungeons and Dragons one I did. That took me half a day to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Like this is the thing, like I've talked about with, especially when you're talking about people, like how long can they really do it? Like, right. JP and I do this show where we've just passed our year mark, and we're so like, I should say I'm so grateful when I think back, like, I'm really glad that the gist of our show is just turning on the camera and talking. We don't edit. I mean, as you saw, as everyone's going to see the beginning of this episode, we don't edit. We just turn on the camera and start talking. And so it may be a 90-minute episode, but that's all we put in for the week is 90 minutes, and we enjoyed our conversation, and we're on to the next week. You guys are making these, let's just say 10 to 20-minute videos. It may take you 2-3 hours to edit, and then, it's just crazy.
You're right. And you have to enjoy doing that. You have to have, and that was the thing. I like doing it, but if you've noticed this past month and even this month, I haven't been putting out as much stuff. Those little shorts I'm doing, I'm enjoying doing those. And that seems to be what I'm gravitating toward. I'm not saying I'm not going to do long form content. I'm working on some long form content. It's just that I'm doing this because it's fun. As soon as it's not fun anymore, or I'm not enjoying it, I'm going to drop it like a hot potato and move on to the next thing. And the shorts were really fun. I'm like, ooh, do what?
You said that quickly, going to drop it like a hot potato.
So I'm going to drop it like a hot potato. And so right now I'm still having fun. I still want to learn some more editing techniques. And it's like any other art form, I think. You got to have some creative juices to do it. And another thing, me and Rohan were really discussing this before. What has been taking up my time recently is I've been doing. Did you hear that? What's been taking up my time on Saturdays is watching something else on TV, and that's all day. Because you're going to watch the noon game, you're going to watch the 3 o'clock game, you're going to watch the West Coast games. It's all day long. So, and that's where I was doing all my editing. I would go, ooh, Saturday morning, I'd get up, I'd get an idea, I'd go down there, and it would probably take me all day, or half a day to film it and edit it and get it ready and then put it out next week. And if you notice, I haven't been putting out as much stuff because my editing day and filming day has been taken up by doing other stuff. Now that certain thing is no longer being done on Saturday.
Alabama football. It's okay to say.
So I may have some more time on Saturdays to do some more editing and those kind of things. But like Lunch Money Comics says, he says, if you're not doing something new and something that somebody else hadn't done before, that's one of his mantras. Ooh, I got to do something new. All my videos seem to be ripping off other people's videos.
Maybe you should start the parody channel of all of us.
And that's what I think. At one point in time, I thought about doing that, about just do straight parody of, let me just parody everybody else, what they're doing. Because I used to do that that's how I got to know Bigby, was I started watching his videos and he's like, ooh, I'm going to do the shout out challenge. Well, then I started mimicking him and the way he would do in his videos and try to talk like he did. And I was outside filming, and let's take it inside, that kind of thing, using the same words that
you actually got that finger point that he does very well.
And so being a teacher students always mock what you do anyway. Sometimes I'd have my students, okay, pretend you're Mr. Akins today. Go up to the board and pretend you're Mr. Akins today. And it's hilarious. So I'm like, maybe I should do that. So right now it's in a sense of, or a state of flux as to what am I going to do next? I like to do funny stuff. But like you said, there's a lot of editing involved in doing that. And so, and another thing that I do with my editing,
it can be frustrating too.
It can be frustrating. I think I've been saying, one of my friends watches my stuff and he's like, what exactly is Jambo style? And it's just, I said, it's just something I made up because there's this other channel called Jambo Comics and I watch it and you never see the man's face. The only thing you see is the comics. He just puts the comics down. And that's the reason I start my video off with me talking. And then I go to, let's feature the comic. Because a lot of times when I'm holding stuff up, is it glare? And then I'm looking around and I'm doing that. And I'm like, I can just set it down there. And another thing that happens from my previous YouTube channel, I smack my lips a lot. And what I'm doing is I'm talking, but then I look at the audio and I'm like, cut that smack out, cut that smack out, cut that smack out. So it looks like I'm just continuously talking the entire time, but that's because I've done a lot of editing and cut out the ums and the and those kind of, and me smacking my lips. So that's another reason I do that.
Question, being a teacher, do any of your students watch or comment to you about your videos?
None of them have ever commented. Only one of them has ever found it. And so I've never really pushed it out to people I know. Most people that I know, except for my one friend, and it was probably months in before I said, you know, because he was watching something on YouTube. He said, you know, I got a YouTube channel. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, I got a YouTube channel where I talk about comics. He's like, where's it at? He's like looking for it. And he's like, and then he just consumed everything. He's the only one that really watches it that I know. I've never told anybody on Facebook or anybody like that. I figured that if I ever, let's say I got to 950 subscribers, then I would push. I say, hey, go, you know, I get everybody on Facebook and I went, okay, I got 1,000, you know, I could get 1,000 real quick that way. But no, I haven't pushed it out to anybody else. I said, let's just let this thing grow organically. If I get viewers, that's fine. I'm always surprised that I get so many people that watch it actually. Because in a classroom, if you got 25 people listening to what you say, wow, that's a lot of people. I'm sitting there looking at it. To me, 60 views is like, I got 60 views on this dang thing. You know, that's amazing to me that 60 people are watching this. I'm gonna get in the shower. Okay.
Seems like you got to go.
No.
Why are you talking to us?
Yeah.
We almost are at the hour mark. Do y'all usually cut this? Are you like Mon Comics? It's an hour. It's done.
No, we always usually go about like 90 minutes, so we can keep going if you're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what I was gonna get to then. So what is? Do you have any thoughts? Any like where would you want the future of the channel to go?
Again, as long as I'm having fun, as my wife would say, you don't care if anybody watches it because you're cracking yourself up down there is what you're doing. So as long as I'm having fun and I feel like I'm learning something, getting some more editing skills.
He says, I'm taking a shower.
Getting some more editing skills, I'll continue to do this. Right now, like I said, I'm in a kind of a creative slump. I'm like, I like doing shorts. I really don't like doing the long form stuff. But there's probably 17 videos I have not posted because I'll start something and I'm like, it's either I don't think it's good or I'll go, I don't know if I should post this or not.
Yeah.
You know, I had one where I did very early and it's like parroting the Godfather where he says and I took it from a commercial that a local lawyer did here. And it's where he says, I'm going to become the Godfather. And the thing I did, it shows my logo and it says, I'm going to become the Godfather of comic book YouTube. And then and then in the movie, he goes and he shoots all these people. He kills, cuts the guy's, the horse's head off and puts it in the thing. So all those scenes I have are like me or the guys shooting like swag. Well, Yeah, is it Swaggle I don't think I shot Swaggle. I think that scene where it shows Swaggle, his sanity book is like ripped up in the bag, and he's screaming, "Oh my!" His book, is ripped up, and then I think I'm shooting Dave from Comic Book Investments, and then at the end of it, it shows a Dave Ramsey logo, and the guy saying, "I don't even do comic book content," and he like shoots him anyway. So I've got that one. I'm like, I don't know if I need to post that one or not. I wanted to do one where it's a parody of people showing their books, their CGC books. You put the Post-it note over it, and they go,
grade reveal.
I just got this back from and it's a fake CGC stuff, and I go, I'm wondering what this grade is, and he pulls the thing off. It's like, wow, it's really not what I wanted. And then it like shows, it says what was really going through his mind. You son of a he's like just freaks out because he's so mad and like smashes the thing. I did one like that, and I was like, that's really short, but it's not long enough for long form content. So
yeah,
I've got a bunch of things that I haven't posted that I don't know if I don't know if I could post that or not.
I mean, I think and I think JP and I are, I mean, at least I know I've said this multiple times on the channel, like when you talk about like we're doing this for the fun of it. I think honestly, like when you don't have thousands of followers, you don't have that obligatory sense, right? Like I've got to do this and I got to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think that makes it a lot more liberating to actually do it, because it's just something we do for fun.
You're just having fun. Yeah. I think another thing that people start these channels, and I think they move to where you're at. Doing live is so much easier. Like you said, you get somebody on there, start talking comics, and it's super easy. And that's where you're going to get your watch hours anyway. You're not going to get your watch hours from 20-minute videos or 5-minute videos or 4-minute videos. You're just not going to get those watch hours from that. So at some point in time, if you want to get monetized, you're going to have to do live at some point in time. So, and I thought about doing some live stuff, but like you said, right now I'm having fun. I'm glad I make some cool people by doing this and getting in the chat. And a lot of times I may not participate so much in the chat, but I'm sitting there watching what's going on. A lot of times I like to watch and then every once in a while chime in. Oh, and to go back to the John Byrne thing, at first I didn't know that this would happen, but I'm kind of glad that I've done this. Yeah, I say that on a lot of my stuff. I said, "Ooh, did someone say John Byrne?" What's happening now, especially with the people in the chat and some
sorry, I got a visitor here.
And some other people on, in other YouTube channels, they can't help but now when they pick up a John Byrne comic, they go, "Yeah, Mr. Akins." They can't, now I've become
You're synonymous. You're synonymous with Byrne.
So yeah.
That's great. So then, we've talked about we're going to Terrificon in the summer. With how you're collecting is kind of going back to collecting here. What would you be hunting at said con? Would it be more Byrne books, something different?
It matters on what I'm looking for at that point. If you really want to know the truth, I'm going to Terrificon to hang out with everybody. I think it's just going to be a crazy, wild time. I think we're going to have a blast. If I get some comics, that's great. If not, that's fine too. That's what my wife was saying. She's like, "You're just going up there to have fun." I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." That's if I'm looking for something, really with the I like to pick up raw comics more than I do slab comics. And if I'm looking for something, if I'm needing an Iron Man 55, that might be something I'm looking to pick up. A Fantastic Four 52 is always on my list. I'd like to have one of those.
Dude, I just saw one on Instagram, super cheap.
Well, if I hadn't just paid for a hotel room,
which one was
tickets,
it? The
3.0?
Yeah, was it? You saw the 3.0, JP?
Was it?
It was like $415 though.
Yeah, 415. Yeah.
So those, I'll have something I could look for in those, and I think the maybe some John Byrne stuff. It would be uncanny, in the Claremont run if I did pick up something from there. Do you know the story of my I used to have, series 1 and 2 cards. Do you know my story of what happened to my cards?
No. I'm surprised
So-
if you had those cards. I'm actually surprised you didn't use those as your like action figure setup.
Well, I used to have action figures
was-
as well. I used to have
that was
action
until the
figures and
90s.
cards.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's not till the night. You're right. I wasn't even thinking. Yeah.
I used to have a lot of that stuff. Well, when we started remodeling, after we finished remodeling the house, went through a period where we were purging stuff. Meaning, if it's not displayed, if it's in a box somewhere, then we don't need it. It needs to be sold. If it's not out being displayed and that kind of thing, I'm like, well, I'm going to get rid of everything except my comics. And I started collecting those little statues. So I had all these cards. I'm like, this is way before I thought they may even be worth something. I'm like, what am I going to do with these cards? Oh, Halloween's coming up. We can make pre-made Halloween bags and I can stick these cards. And so I tons of cards. I was just sticking them. And it lasted I had so many cards and we had so many people come. I think it took me 4 years to get rid of that. 4 Halloweens. I was still, and what we would do is I would make pre-made bags of stuff and then they would put in a box and we would store it away. And then we carry it down. And then when Halloween come, we just put some candy in it and then have it. And then when the kids would come, I'd hand out, cards. So that's what happened to all my cards. All my cards got handed out at Halloween. I took all my action figures. I said, either I'm going to collect, do what?
I think you said gave them away.
I gave all my cards
gave them away. It's hard to believe. Probably a couple of PSA 10s.
And then my action figures, I said, either I'm going to collect action figures or I'm going to collect these little mini busts. And at that time, those mini busts were pretty cheap. They were being sold at my LCS for $20 a pop.
Well,
now those things are hundreds of dollars.
I was gonna say, especially with you growing up, cutting out and like kind of posing these guys and whatnot, like you've got that comic book room. We've seen it in your videos. You've got some space. Like you can see some people, they have these rooms and they make the big dioramas of the characters with the act, and they can look really cool.
Yeah, and that was a decision I made. I said, I am either going to continue on with the action figures or I'm going to continue on with the statues. And I decided to go on with the statues instead of the action figures. So I really traded because most of that money I got, I just repurposed it into statues. Now, I still have some of those larger action figures, those legends that are like this big. They're like the Hulk and Captain America and Spider-Man. I think I still got those 3 that are these big, huge action figures. And I think I've got one small Legends action figure of Wolverine because that one looks really cool. It's beside a Hugh Jackman signed picture that somebody got me for Christmas. And it's beside it down there in my room. So I still got some stuff, but it's primarily just comic books down there now and those little statues.
Oh, we lost JP.
JP can't handle it. JP can't handle it.
I think he just stopped having fun and he dropped it like that, like you said.
A hot potato.
He's like, this Mr. Akins, he's had it with him, and I'm dropping this stuff out of here.
But yeah, that's what happened to all my cards. I gave them away at Halloween.
I actually think that's a cool idea because I have the set from my kid, but if I had actors like, I think that's a great idea, and now we're indoctrinating the youth with the stuff that's good.
Well, that's what I did this past Halloween. Since I bought that collection, there was a lot of stuff that couldn't be sold. And I put it in a long box and I sat out here on my porch and put it on the table and I spread them out and I'm like, hey, pick some comics. Oh, can I have a comic? I said, you can have more than one. It was stuff that there was no way I could sell. They were either so badly ripped or anything. And so I gave away a bunch of comics for, I gave away about 3/4 of a long box of comics because I'm like, I just need to get rid of these things. And they weren't worth selling. So
in the future of your collection, is there a consolidation you have in sight or do you like having all of it?
I think there will be once I finally finish processing this collection I bought. I think I'll start selling off. I think I'll start listing it on eBay and selling it off. And I'm thinking I'm wanting more complete runs. I will get the Iron Man run this year, probably before the year's over with, and take some of that money, move it into, like I said, John Byrne, because like I said before, I've reached my limit on the number of comics I can have. So if I want more comics, I have to consolidate and then expand. So it's going to be one of these things where it's going to consolidate and probably expand out, and in a sense, curate.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when I get curated to the point that, ooh, I've got 12 or whoever many I've got down there and I can't expand anymore, then I may decide, okay, I may go for certain runs. I'm going to keep my Iron Man run. I'm going to,
so
hey, what run?
Through and through, though, you are intent, at least now, to remain a run collector, though.
Yeah, because I like to read. And so I consider myself a reader first and a collector second. I collected, I mean, when I was a kid, they were just sitting on a shelf. I just stacked them on a shelf. And then one day I found out, oh, you could put these things in bags and boards and there's a box made for them. I'm like, oh, that's going to be easier to store. And somebody was saying, well, why do you want to store them? I said, well, I may want to go back and read them. Well, why don't you just read stuff online? And I think I said this in other live shows and stuff. I said, well, it's not the same. He said, what do you mean it's not the same? And I said, well, here's an example. My wife and I, we can make a mean batch of crawfish etouffee, but it's nothing like going to the gumbo shop in New Orleans and getting a batch of crawfish etouffee. I can watch Penn State on TV here. Ain't nothing like going to the whiteout game. I can read comics online, but it's not the same as reading a physical copy that was old. It's got the same old ads they had back then, had that smell to it. I'm a traditionalist in that sense that I want to read.
No, I mean, and kind of going back to the reading of other things that we were talking about earlier, like for years I had switched to using the Kindle, and I got kind of over that. Now I'm back to because not only do I like reading the physical book, I do like when I'm done putting it on the shelf, and it's like it kind of like a accomplishment kind of sense of seeing of what I read this year and things like that. So no, I get that.
So
you got to hold it in your hand.
You got to hold it. Well, I think Stan Lee put it.
To be perfectly honest, it's easier to hold a Kindle than it is a book because it's just like this. But I enjoy reading.
True, but like you said, that the smell of it just brings you back to that time frame. Like when I go into an antique store and I smell the comic books, like my wife's like, "Oh, it smells like an antique store." I'm like, "No, that reminds me of like 1980, right? 1984." It just.
And it's one of the most powerful reminders of memories, of triggering memories. It's one of the senses that generates more is smell more than anything else. There's also that quote.
I didn't realize that till I walked into an Italian grocery store and it smelled just like my grandmother's house growing up, and it brought me back 30 years, like just like that. The smell is the most, like you think vision would be, but it's the smell. You're right, 100%.
Yeah. And having that physical copies like that Stan Lee quote, when somebody said, well, comic books will go away or going digital, he said, you can see boobs on TV on the screen, but it ain't like having them in your hand.
This is why they say Stan Lee was a brilliant marketer, man. It's lines like that.
So,
well, I think I have to say that quote means that Stan Lee was a team B person, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he could have said it behind closed doors.
Who wants to be on Stan Lee's side?
maybe that's why him. Maybe that's why him and Kirby feuded. Kirby was team A, and they just kept butting heads, and that was it.
That makes sense. I'm all about Stan Lee then, not Kirby then. So
makes sense. Yeah. Well, Mr. Akins, this has been awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're very welcome. I've had a good time.
Yeah. Why don't you tell everybody real quick where they can find you, the Instagrams, the YouTubes, all that good stuff, and we'll wrap it up here.
Instagram and YouTube at What's on the Comic Rack.
There you go.
Great
right
name.
on. Yeah, and we'll put your Instagram handle, the channel link in the description, all that good stuff. So make sure and sub this guy up. It's some good. I find it very light, funny humor. Like it's we don't. You got all the comic book investment talk, and you got all it's like go here for a good comic book laugh is what I'll tell people. And I
For a good
love,
time,
I love,
see
I
Mr.
love the
Akins.
editing.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
All
Right
right, well,
on.
you guys, you heard it. For a good time, go see Mr. Akins. Find him on YouTube, find him on IG, and we will see you all on the next video or short review. So everyone, have a great night. Peace out.
Later.
See y'all later.